maybe next week on Skynet. The Alpha Monocerid meteor shower will peak on the night of November 20th, 21st with around 5 meteors per hour, but it could have a spike up to 400 meteors per hour. Again, we don't know its rate of when it has those maximums. The November Orionid meteor shower will peak on the night of November 27th, 28th with a handful of meteors per hour. Now, more information about meteor showers can be found at the International Meteor Organization, IMO.net, or the American Meteor Society, AMSmeteors.org. Slide Master, slide number 4, please. Okay, it's already been talked about, but just in a few hours at 2 a.m., on Sunday, November the 6th, that's tomorrow morning, just a few hours from now, we'll return to standard time. So the phrase spring forward and fall back tells us what to do. We fall back, our clocks back by 1 hour in the fall. This craziness of changing from standard time to daylight time is the result of using daylight saving time, it's singular, daylight saving time, during wars and oil crises in the 1970s, and then shortly thereafter, it became permanent. There's been multiple bills in the Texas state legislature and the U.S. legislature to either stay on daylight time permanently or remain on standard time permanently, but so far nothing has happened. So I'm reminding you that after Skynet tonight, if you don't go to the Afterglow movie, and before you go to bed tonight, set your clocks back by 1 hour. Your phone will automatically reset. Your computer should automatically reset as long as they're connected to the internet. Slide Master, slide number 5. We've already talked about this. Let me talk about it in a little bit more detail. Early on Tuesday morning, November the 8th, there's going to be a total lunar eclipse. The eclipse begins at 2:02 a.m. Central Standard Time when the moon enters the lighter part of the Earth's shadow. At 3:09 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon enters the umbral shadow of the Earth. That's the darker part of the Earth shadow. At 4:17, I think Bill said 4:16, and we're off by a few seconds, depending on who you want to talk to. At 4:17 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is completely inside the umbral shadow, and this is when we call totality. That's when it begins. The middle of the eclipse is at 4:59 a.m. Now at 5:02 a.m. Central Standard Time, the moon begins to leave the umbral shadow, and at 6:49 the moon leaves the umbral shadow. Now for us here in North Texas, the sunrise, which is also moonset, happens right around 6:55. That occurs, so we won't get to see the end of the eclipse. Now, all you really need are your two eyes to enjoy the eclipse, but a pair of binoculars or a telescope will enhance the event. As a bonus, use some astronomy software and you can find the planet Uranus only about 1 degree away from the moon during the eclipse. All you need is a pair of binoculars and a good star map to find the planet Uranus during the eclipse. Slide Master, slide number 6, please. November the 11th is when you can find the conjunction of the moon and Mars taking place in the eastern evening sky. Slide number 7, please. On November the 20th, you can find very low in the west-southwestern evening sky Venus and Mercury in conjunction. Now, 2 evenings later, this is slide number 8, on November the 22nd, Venus, Mercury, and the bright star Antares will all be in conjunction in the low west-southwestern sky. And just more evenings, this is slide number 9, on November the 24th, beside in another in the low west-southwestern sky. Slide Master, slide number 10, please. On November the 30th, Mars will be at its closest approach to the Earth since 26 months ago. On December the 7th, Mars will be in opposition, which means it's 180 degrees away or opposite the sun in the sky. Now, these two events would happen at the same time if the orbit of Mars and the orbit of the Earth were both circular, but they're both something called ellipses, and so that's why they don't occur at the same time. Now, more about this event, about Mars's closest approach, I'll give it in the next couple of weeks on Skynet. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 11, please. Next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting will be held on Friday, November the 18th once again, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also held on Zoom. The featured speaker is Robert Reeves, and his topic's about the moon. Don't miss it. Please show up in person. He has excellent pictures of the moon. I have a few of his pictures. Saturday night public observing sessions have already begun. Check out the website, texasastro.org, for up-to-date information and details about the public meetings and the public observing sessions. Slide Master, slide number 12. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have any questions or need a fill on any of the information? Or do you just have a general astronomy question? Come now with your call sign if you have a question. Now, just to let you know, Houston's ahead at the bottom of the fourth, 4-1. Philadelphia only has 1 run. Houston has 4. Can win the World Series tonight. Okay. Slide Master, slide number 13. So as the moon wanes at the middle of October, so do these words for this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well, pray for our world. It's the only one where humans live. And until next time, I may be doing another segment on Skynet if time allows. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is Chaz, KF5JHA. Back to our net control. Bill, I think it's all yours.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chaz. Does anybody have any questions? Or are there any late check-ins? If so, please come now. This is Inside BB Skynet.
Hello, Bravo 9, Sarah Oscar Kilo, Sean Fort Worth, just checking in.
That's KB9SOK. Thank you, Sean. Okay, I'd like to recognize Kelly, K5KTX, who should be on now. Kelly, it's your turn for space exploration and space history. This is N5BB.
Thank you, Bill. This is K5KTX, Kelly, and I don't think I've checked in tonight, but I'm back in Quinlan now. So around 8:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time yesterday, November the 4th, the Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 1 mission arrived at Launch Pad 39B at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida after a nearly 9-hour journey from the Vehicle Assembly Building. Teams will continue working to configure SLS and Orion for the upcoming November 14th launch attempt. The 69-minute launch window starts at 12:07 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. NASA has requested backup launch opportunities for Wednesday, November 16th at 1:04 a.m. and Saturday, November 19th at 1:45 a.m. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to get any sleep, am I? Which are both 2-hour launch windows. A launch on November 14th would result in a mission duration of about 25.5 days with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean Friday, December the 9th. Artemis 1 is an uncrewed flight test to launch SLS and send Orion around the moon and back to Earth to thoroughly test its system before flights with astronauts. So crossing my fingers that we will finally get this thing off of the ground. Now, in space history this week, beginning with October the 30th, 1964, NASA research pilot Joe Walker climbed into a very strange contraption. The machine was called the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle, or LLRV, or sometimes the Flying Bedstead. The spindly, four-legged research craft was designed to simulate the conditions astronauts would find when landing. The moon only has 1/6 of Earth's gravity, and there is no atmosphere to create drag, so the final landing had an almost vertical approach with the speed controlled by a rocket engine. The main engine of the LLRV would lift it to test altitude and then be throttled back until it only supported 5/6 of the craft's total weight. The craft and pilot would then be subjected to conditions similar to those they would experience on the moon. Walker demonstrated this principle on 3 flights on that first day of testing. As Neil Armstrong, the first astronaut to land on the moon, said, the mission would not have been successful without the type of simulation that resulted from the LLRVs. On October 31st, 1936, a group of California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, students and enthusiasts that would become the Jet Propulsion Laboratory conducted its first liquid-fueled rocket test. 22 years later, in December 1958, just 2 months after NASA was created, JPL was transferred to NASA from the U.S. Army. JPL is still managed by Caltech for NASA as a federally funded research and development center. But these days, JPL's main focus is on robotic space exploration and not rocket jet propulsion. The engineers at JPL put America into the space age by building the first American satellite to reach orbit, Explorer 1, launched on January 31st, 1958. Now they're sending robotic missions to study our solar system. On November the 1st, 1963, the Arecibo Observatory opened in Puerto Rico. For over 50 years, it was home to the world's biggest single-dish radio telescope until July 2016, when it was overtaken by China's 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, or FAST. Arecibo is perhaps best known to the general public for the role it has played in movies, having appeared in films such as James Bond's GoldenEye in 1995 and television programs such as The X-Files. Arecibo is also popular in science fiction literature because of its importance in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Arecibo has fictitiously picked up intelligent extraterrestrial signals in novels such as Carl Sagan's Contact in 1985 and Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow, also in 1985. Following 2 breaks in cables supporting the receiver platform, the National Science Foundation stated on November 19, 2020, that it was decommissioning the telescope due to safety concerns. On December 1, 2020, the main telescope collapsed before controlled demolition could be conducted. The National Science Foundation just recently announced that the telescope will not be rebuilt. And this is K5KTX. On November the 2nd, 2000, Expedition 1 docked with the International Space Station, or ISS. The crew of 3, Commander Bill Shepard and flight engineers Yuri Gudzenko and Sergei Krikalev, rode aboard the Soyuz TM-31 to begin their stay on the ISS. And since that day, the space station has been continuously inhabited. Expedition 1 marked the beginning of the first permanent off-planet residence for humanity. The new inhabitants of the ISS were extremely busy in their time on the station. Over the course of their 136 days aboard, they were visited by 3 space shuttle missions as well as 2 automated resupply craft. The crew successfully installed a set of the station's solar arrays and the Destiny laboratory. The mission officially came to an end on March 18, 2001, when the crew boarded the Shuttle Discovery STS-102 and headed for home, but not before turning the station over to Expedition 2, Commander Yuri Yushchev and flight engineers Jim Voss and Susan Helm. Today, on day 8038, the Expedition 68 astronauts, commanded by Sergei Prokopyev, carried the baton forward. On November the 3rd, 1957, Sputnik 2 launched, the second satellite put into orbit by the Soviets in just under a month. But Sputnik 2 was quite different from its predecessor. Instead of launching a simple aluminum sphere, the USSR had created a more complex spacecraft, this time including a live passenger. The passenger was a dog named Laika, who became the first Earthling to enter Earth orbit. Laika, whose name means barker in Russian, proved that animals could survive in space and paved the way for human spaceflight. In many ways, Sputnik 2 was more alarming to Americans than Sputnik because it indicated that both the Soviet ambition to put a human in orbit and proof of their ability to launch such a complex mission. Sadly, Laika's mission was a one-way trip. The USSR had not yet perfected re-entry technology. Also on November the 3rd, back in 1973, Mariner 10 took flight. It was the first spacecraft to visit Mercury, the first spacecraft to use a gravity assist. It used the gravity of Venus to reach Mercury, and with that record was also the first spacecraft to visit 2 planets. Getting into orbit around Mercury is a huge challenge and was only achieved in 2011 by the Messenger probe. But some extremely clever space navigation allowed Mariner 10 to make 3 flybys of Mercury in the early 1970s. Using a gravity assist from Venus, Mariner 10 was placed into an orbit around the Sun that brought it within flyby distance of Mercury in March and September 1974, and then again in March 1975. Such skillful navigation set the stage for exploration of the outer solar system with multiple gravity assists. And this past week, we celebrated a bunch of astronaut birthdays. Wow, we have a big list, so I will try to get through them pretty fast. October the 30th, 1946, Robert Hoot Gibson, who was part of Space Shuttle missions STS-41B, 61C, 27, 47, and 71. Also, October the 30th, 1961, Ronald Guerin, Jr., Space Shuttle mission STS-124 and Expedition 2728. October 30th, 1964, Sandra Magnus, who was on Space Shuttle mission STS-112, which, by the way, was the first space shuttle launch that I got to see from inside Kennedy Space Center. STS-126 and 119 as part of Expedition 18, and she was on the very last Space Shuttle mission, STS-135. On October 31st, 1930, Michael Collins, who was part of the Gemini 10 and, of course, Apollo 11. October 31st, 1949, Terrence Wilcott, Space Shuttle mission STS-68, 79, 89, and 106. November 1st, 1953, happy birthday to Jan Davis, Space Shuttle mission STS-47, 60, and 85. November 2nd, 1944, Jeffrey Hoffman, Space Shuttle missions STS-51D, 35, 46, 61, and 75. November 3rd, 1954, Kevin Chilton, Space Shuttle missions STS-49, 59, and 76. November 5th, today, we have 4 birthdays, so happy birthday. 1948, Robert Sinker, Space Shuttle mission STS-61C. 1961, Charles Hobaugh, Space Shuttle missions STS-104, 118, and 129. 1961, Alan Poindexter, STS-122 and 131. And we rounded out from 1962, Alvin Drew, Space Shuttle mission STS-118 and 133. And that's all I've got this evening. Back to you, Bill. This is K5 KTX.
Very good, Kelly. This is N5BD. There is a possibility of a tropical storm that could turn into a hurricane going up maybe toward the east coast of Florida. But right now, there's nothing definite, and hopefully that doesn't delay Artemis. It's had enough weather delays already. Very good. So let's see. Before we move forward, do we have any questions or late check-ins? This is N5BB, net control for Skynet.
Check-in, this is KI5QLE.
Yes, sir, KI5QLE. Good evening. I need your name and location, please.
My name is Kyle G, and I'm in Saxe.
Very good, Kyle. That sounds like a new call. How long have you been to him?
A little over a year. I've been listening in for a couple weeks, and I figure I'd finally throw my call out here.
Very good, Kyle. Well, you're welcome to attend these meetings. And here, probably in about 15 minutes or so, we'll have another net on here talking about a movie that we're going to be reviewing. So you're welcome to listen or participate with that also. Okay, this is N5BB, Skynet. Or do we have any other check-ins?
KI5.
Okay, please see your call phonetically and give me your name and location.
So India 5, Tango Echo, Papa, Aaron, from Greenville, Texas.
Very good, Aaron. KI5TEP. Wow, Greenville is a long shot. You're doing fine. Thank you very much. Do we have any other check-ins to Skynet? This is N5BB. Okay, KI5JRH, N5BB, KF5JHA, N5BB. Chaz, did you say that you wanted to delay the Constellation of the week? It is getting kind of late.
It'll take about 6 or 7 minutes. It's your pleasure if you want me to do this or postpone it till next week. It's up to you. You're in control.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. Go ahead, N5BB.
Okay, thank you, Bill. This is Chaz, KF5JHA, Slide Master, slide number 14. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC50ZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Since there are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total constellations, so Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky as seen over North Texas in a year. In her honor, we have continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week this week is Aquarius, the water bearer. Slide Master, slide number 15. The most important part of Skynet is coming up, Jokes of the Week. My friend can't afford to pay his water. Aquarii is a Type 2 F2 supergiant of nearly equal brightness. Both of them are. So in a telescope, it looks like two identical or nearly identical stars in a binary pair. It looks like two eyeballs looking back at you. Slide Master, slide number 17. M2 is a globular cluster. It is an easy object for binoculars and small telescopes. It looks like a little ball of glowing mist in a 2-inch telescope, according to Robert Burnham, Jr. The late task member Rick Rausch called M2 a fine object in almost void area of the sky. Rick wrote that the Constellation of the Month articles in the task spectrum from 1991 until 2005. Slide Master, slide number 18, please. M73 is a small grouping of 4 stars not far from M72. It is merely a small telescopic asterism. It's not a true open cluster or multiple star system. This was proven by research conducted in 2000 and 2001 using the spectral data given radio velocity measurements as well as proper motion data by the Tycho 2 catalog. Master, slide number 19. NGC 7293 is the Helix Nebula. At 522 light years away, the Helix is widely regarded as the nearest planetary nebula to our solar system. Its angular size extends across a fairly large field of view compared to most deep sky objects. It is particularly noticeable when you consider that many planetary nebulae look quite small and star-like even under high magnification. But imagine looking at a first quarter moon. The helix would span the distance of the moon's limb to the terminator of a first quarter moon. Sidemaster, slide number 20. NGC 7009 is the Saturn Nebula, which is very close to M72 and M73 that I've talked about already. Despite this, and the fact that it is fairly large, the bright planetary nebula, it was overlooked by Messier and instead was discovered by William Herschel in 1702. Lord Rossi named it the Saturn Nebula in 1850 from the ring-like extensions on either side, which resemble the rings of the planet Saturn when seen nearly edge-on. Slide Master, slide number 21, please. It is worth mentioning here because it is currently found in Aquarius, not too far away from Jupiter. At a magnitude 7.8, Neptune is too dim to be seen with unaided eye, but it is an easy visible target with binoculars, if you know where you're looking. Sky and Telescope magazine publishes finder charts for Uranus and Neptune every year, and any decent planetarium software should also show where you can look for it. In binoculars, Neptune simply looks like a star, or so far away it looks nearly stellar in a telescope most of the time until you crank up the power. Even then, it is simply small, looking like a tiny blue disk. This is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 22. There are many, well, maybe not that many, but there may be a few more astronomically observing program objects in the constellation of Aquarius and the Water Bearer. I've just given you a sampling of some of those. The Astronomical League has a count, at last count, 75 different observing programs, of which most have about 100 objects. If you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, you can earn an observing certificate and a pen from the Astronomical League in about a year. And Master, slide number 23, and that is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, Aquarius, the Water Bearer. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research, words, and on deep sky objects that I've used and borrowed and steal for every Skynet. Next week, I'll take a look at Cepheus the King, and this is KF5, JHA, sending it back to Remote Control. Bill, it's all back to you. 73, everyone.
Thank you, Chess. Brenda, WB5OZL. Our afterglow discussion should be kind of short. I think
Operational, and all my circuits are
functional. Do you want to give us an overview of the Mars information that you discovered? It sounds interesting. WB5OZL, N5BB.
WB5OZL, this is, I'm sorry, N5BB, this is WB5OZL. Yeah, I can read this article. Do you want me to read the whole thing or just part of it?
I think just go right ahead. We'll run a little over, but we've got plenty of time. N5BB.
All right. This is entitled Mars's Crust More Complex and Evolved Than Previously Thought. The Martian surface is uniformly basaltic, a product of billions of years of volcanism and flowing lava on the surface that eventually cooled. Because Mars did not undergo full-scale surface remodeling like the shifting of continents on Earth, scientists thought Mars's crustal history was a relatively simple tale. But in a new study researchers found locations in the red planet's southern hemisphere with greater concentrations of silicon, a chemical element, than what would be expected in a purely basaltic setting. The silica concentration had been exposed by space rocks that slammed into Mars, excavating material that was embedded miles below the surface, revealing a hidden past. There is more silica in the composition that makes the rocks not basalt, but what we call more evolved in composition, says Valerie Perret, assistant professor of the Department of Earth and Environmental Services Sciences at the University of Iowa and the study's corresponding author. That tells us how the crust formed on Mars is definitely more complex than what we knew. So it's more about understanding that process and especially what it means for how Earth's crust first formed. Scientists now believe Mars formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Exactly how the red planet came into being is a mystery, but there are theories. One theory is that Mars formed via a titanic collision of rocks in space that, with its intense heat, spawned an entirely liquefied state, also known as a magma ocean. The magma ocean gradually cooled, the theory goes, yielding a crust like the layer of skin that would be singularly basaltic. Another theory is that the magma ocean was not all-encompassing and that parts of the first crust on Mars had a different origin, one that would show silica concentrations different from basaltic. Perret and her research partners analyzed data gathered by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter for the planet's southern hemisphere, which previous research had indicated was the oldest region. The researchers found 9 locations, such as craters and fractures in the terrain, that were rich in feldspar, a mineral associated with lava flows that are more silicic than basaltic. That was the first clue, Perry says. It is because the terrains are feldspar rich that we explored the silica concentrations there. Feldspar had been found previously in other regions on Mars, but further analysis showed the chemical composition in those areas was more basaltic. That did not deter the researchers, who turned to another instrument called THEMIS, which can detect silica concentrations through infrared wavelength reflections from the Martian surface. With data from THEMIS, the team determined the terrain at their chosen locations was more silicic than basaltic. Adding further credence to their observations, meteorites such as Erg-Check 002, discovered in the Sahara, dating roughly to the birth of the solar system, show similar silicic and other mineral compositions that the team observed in the 9 locations on Mars. The researchers also dated the crust to about 4.2 billion years, which would make it the oldest crust found on Mars to date. Perret says she was mildly surprised at the discovery. There have been rovers on the surface that have observed rocks that were more silicic than basaltic, she says. So there were ideas the crust would be more silicic. But we never knew, and we still don't know how the early crust was formed or how old it is, so it's still kind of a mystery. While Mars's crustal origin remains shrouded, Earth's crustal history is even less clear, as any vestiges of our planet's original crust have been long erased due to the shifting of continental plates for billions of years. Still, the finding may offer insights into Earth's origins. We don't know our planet's crust from the beginning. We don't even know when life first appeared, Perry says. Many think the two could be related, so understanding what the crust was like a long time ago could help us understand the whole evolution of our planet. Perret conducted the research as a postdoctoral researcher at Northern Arizona University. She joined the UI in August. The study, an evolved early crust exposed on Mars revealed through spectroscopy, was published online November 4th in the journal Geophysical Research Letters. Okay, that's it. Back to net. This is WB50ZL.
Very good, Brenda. Thank you very much. Okay, Do we have any last check-ins before I close the net? This is N5BB, Skynet Net Controller. We had 28 hams participating in the air. Thanks to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week, every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never lit. Always looking for net controls stations. If you're interested, send us an email at nets@w5fc.org. You can follow these topics on Facebook and Twitter, as well as audio and visual streams. Look for Skynet, look for w5fc.org. Until next Saturday night, this is N5BB Bill. I'm closing a net at 10:36 p.m. this evening. Don't forget to set your clocks back an hour tonight. 73, everybody, enjoy the evening discovering the universe. And over to Tom for Skynet. N5BB clear.
Thank you, Bill. Let's take about a 5-minute break, and we'll be back, and we'll be talking about the television show Search from 1972, tonight's episode of the Merle disappearance. Back in 5, KE5ICF.
K5ICX and 5HYP.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll be here just for the beginning. I think I'd like to promote the event next Friday up the top, if we could.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'll call on you when we get started. How's that?
So yeah, I'm okay with doing what you suggested.
But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's actually kind of a fun series. I enjoyed anyway. I've actually not seen every one of them because there were a number of them. But yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun.
See you in a bit. N5H5P.
All right, it's been about 5 minutes, so we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight is the Afterglow Movie Net, and we'll be talking about a television show called Search, which is from 1972. I'll tell you about it here in a few minutes, but I think what we will do is we'll go ahead and at the very top here, we'll talk to Tom, N5HYP. He has an announcement to make, so everybody listen up. Tom, go ahead with your announcement.
K5ICX and the Afterglow Movie Net. This is N5HYP. Talked with Tom about a month or two ago about reprising the movie and s'mores event at our place this year again. Last year we had a few folks come out. It didn't turn out to be as many folks as we thought. That was, we still had a good time. This year we're going to do it. We planned on doing it, or plan on doing it this coming Friday, the 11th, and at my place, which is in Irving, 2713 Lake Gardens Drive in Irving. We'll be doing s'mores in a movie, and Tom and I kind of worked around for a while for something that would be kind of comedic, kind of sci-fi, but an interestingly different thing that we've never seen as a group before. So we came up with a thing which is the pilot for a series from some years ago called The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. It's kind of a Western. It's kind of got a sci-fi bent. It's got a little bit, some interesting humor to it. And I think if you watch it, you will see it kind of reminds me a bit of Mr. General here. It is available on Tubi as a commercial inserted view, so it's free for everyone. Anyway, the point is, we're going to have some s'mores, maybe some hot dogs, and watch a movie in the backyard on our screen. It is going to be a little bit chilly next week Friday. The current forecast is for highs only in the upper 50s and kind of cooling down in the evening. So dress appropriately, but we would love to have you. Time frame would be 7 o'clock for getting started, 7:30. Of the first episode. Guys are all invited. I would like to have an idea of who's going to be able to come, so you can email me at my call sign, n5hyp@arrl.net. Let me know. I'll get you a text version of the address so that you can GPS it. It's not too hard to find. Just a couple miles north of I-30 off of MacArthur Boulevard in the very far south end of Irving. We'd love to have you. That's it. Any questions or fills? This is N5HYP. Back to that, and I did not see the movie for this week, Tom. This is N5HYP.
Oh, bad Tom. Okay, well, I will, for those of you who are familiar and are on the email list, that's just about everybody who listens to this, I will send out the particulars in the email tomorrow morning with also the links in case you can't make it. But please do try. Please do try and make it. We'd love to have you. E5ICX, and this is the Afterglow Movie Net. We're going to go ahead and get started. First off, let me tell you a little bit about the series, and then we will talk about there's first episode, which is the pilot. It was only 50 minutes long, 55 minutes, back in the days when you had 55-minute TV programs. Now they are down to about 42 minutes. Changed through the years. But let me tell you about it, and I'll give you my personal feelings and why I picked it. So here we go. Search is an American science fiction series that aired on Wednesday nights on NBC at 10 p.m. on Eastern Time. From September 72 to August of 1973, it ran 23 episodes, not including the 2-hour pilot, which, by the way, I could not find anywhere, originally titled Probe. For the series production, the title had to be changed because Probe was the name of an existing PBS series. In the UK, the series aired on BBC One under the title Search Control. In Spain, it was Investigation, and in Italy, it was just titled Search. The show was created by Leslie Stevens and produced by Stevens. Robert H. Justman, John Strong, and Anthony Spinner were producers for the series. The high concept was described as science fiction in today's world, and its episodes featured many high-tech elements which are now considered common in current science fiction shows. The series centers on World Securities Corporation, a high-tech international private investigation company that employs field operatives, the elite of whom are aided by implanted audio receivers and who carry scanners, tiny video camera telemetry units which can be attached to tie clips and other jewelry. The most common method is to wear the scanner on a ring, enabling it to be discreetly aimed. Each episode featured one of 3 primary agents on a particular investigation, which often had political or organized crime elements. Search finished in the Nielsen ratings in 72-73 with a 14.6 average audience. It was rated number 63 out of 75 shows that season. A little bit more about it. Probe agents reported to VCR Cameron, that was played by Burgess Meredith, the director of investigations who ran Probe Control, a center reminiscent of the NASA Mission Control Center. Cam was the leader of the expert team who monitored and provided the agent with intelligence. On duty, experts included a translator fluent in several languages and medical telemetry specialists. Early in the series, Probe Control set was placed in a darkened, isolated space, alluring to a large-scale operations center. By the middle of the series, the control room was scaled down and relocated in a well-lit but smaller bunker room. According to the show's credits, the computer equipment was provided by Control Data Corporation. Everybody remembers that because you get a degree from the Control Data Institute. 2 modern futuristic buildings were shown in the headquarters of World Securities Corporation. The pilot movie, 555 California Street in San Francisco, was used. This building, completed just a few years earlier in '69, was once the headquarters building of Bank of America in the TV series. World Securities headquarters was 600 Commonwealth Avenue in Los Angeles. This actually was the Central Civil West Courthouse, which belongs to the Central Judicial District of Los Angeles. And then finally, just a little bit about the hardware. It says each field agent is outfitted with a miniature scanner disguised as a piece of jewelry, which could be magnetically attached to special cufflinks, tie clips, rings, and pendants. The device continuously monitors the agent's progress, transmitting audio, video, and physical telemetry to Probe Control. These images were stabilized and rotated to permit real-time observation by specialists at Probe Control who analyze the data, consult databases worldwide, and immediately provide information covertly to the field agent via the subcutaneous earpiece or ear jack implanted in the agent's mastoid process. I don't know, but first-generation ear jacks had platinum housings, later replaced by zirconium for unspecified reasons. The agents can respond to Probe Control either audibly via a microphone in the scanner or by tapping out code with a dental implant, even when they don't have their scanner operating. The telemetry portrayed in the show was 20 to 30 years ahead of its time, and some of the technology was difficult for viewers to identify with. Well, the first episode tonight is the Merle disappearance. This one had starred Hugh O'Brien. There was Doug McClure was one of the agents. Tony Franciosa was the other. So those were the three main stars. The original air date for this episode was September 13th, 1972. That's premiere week for television back then. Now we go all the way to October before we get new shows. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hope we get some check-ins this evening. It's a little different than what we normally do, but let's see what happens. I will now take check-ins. If you'd like to join us this evening, or even if you haven't seen this particular episode called The Merle Disappearance, that's okay. We don't mind. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see tonight's episode search, the Merle Disappearance? Please come now.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo. Bill and Irving, yes.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony and Dallas. It was short, so I actually saw it somehow.
Kilo India 5, Gulf Romeo Hotel, Melissa in Search City Mobile. I have not seen it, but I wanted to listen on the way home.
Kilo Golf 5, Bravo Zulu Whiskey, J, near Weatherford. I saw the episode.
Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia, East Fort Worth. Yes, I did see it.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda DeSoto. Yes, I did see it.
Kilo India 5, Kilo Whiskey Golf Cruise in Arlington. Yes, I saw it.
Okay, there was one double, so I'm going to miss one of these people. It was at the very end. So let me tell you who I've got. I've got N5BB, Bill and Irving. Yes, he saw it. NT5TM, Tony in Dallas. Yep, he saw it. KI5GRH, Melissa in Search City, somewhere out there. No, she did not see it, but that's okay. KG5BZWJ near Weatherford. Yep, he saw it. KV5F, Virginia, Fort Worth. Yeah, she saw it. WB5OZL, Brenda in DeSoto. Yep, she saw it. KI5KWG, cruising. I think I sometimes mess up. And he says yes. There was somebody else out there I think we missed. I'll take additional check-ins now.
Kilo India 5, Yankee Oscar Victor, Mike from McKinney. No, I did not see it.
Okay, good. I got KI5YOV, Mike over in McKinney. You're down towards the end of the list if you're still there. I think you will be. I'll ask you what you think about the show and what some of the comments were. This is always fun because we try to also introduce people to additional and new things that, in this case, very old stuff. But as I mentioned in the prior net, this was the show that you watched after Star Trek was canceled because it came out a couple of years later with some of the same people who worked on Star Trek. Anyone else want to join us this evening? Please come now with your call sign, your name, and did you see Search from 1972?
Whiskey 5, Bacon Lettuce Tomato, W5DLT, Bill in Garland, yes.
Hey, got one more. I got W5BLT, Bill in Garland. You got a little bit of static there, Bill, so you may want to increased power when it's your turn. But at any rate, we're glad you're here, and I got you down as having seen the movie. Anybody over on Echolink? I see some folks that have not checked in who may be listening. If you'd like to join us from Echolink, please come now with your call sign name, whether you saw the movie, and we'll give you extra. Please go ahead. Okay, could be some holdovers from the previous net, but here we go. Let's start. I'll go ahead and start at the top then. We'll start with Bill, N5BB. Bill, thanks for doing the net this evening, Skynet. Your comments about tonight's episode, or even the series in general, called Search. Tonight's episode, The Merle Disappearance from 1972. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. Well, this episode initially aired right just the first month I was starting college, University of Texas. So I was busy, and so I'm sure I didn't see this particular episode. The thing looks vaguely familiar, so my guess is I saw some later episode. You remember Burgess Meredith and the whole premise for the series. But, you know, it has been a long time. So it's been 50 years. So my brain cells don't remember exactly what was happening every month back then. Let's see. Some things about the plot. It was probably kind of an interesting idea for the time, because there weren't any well, the only thing that was micro miniature kind of like that was spy things, little kind of that small, 007 kind of spy cameras and spy tape recorders and even little radio frequency spy listening devices. So those things existed back there and were kind of generally known to the public. Took it to a whole new level with the little spy camera on his ring finger and all that kind of stuff. And the background, the sending him information back the other direction. Of course, the big character in this was the computer. Yep, that was the main character, and that was what brought all this about. And speaking of CDC. When I was there at University of Texas, I was using a big CDC computer, which was larger than what you see there. They were very large. And you saw the tape decks in the back and the control consoles and all these kind of things. All the things you'd expect for a, 72 level thing, like Apollo moonshots. That's the kind of control panel, control boards you would kind of expect for somebody controlling a moonshot or something like that. Let's see. Other things about the general movie and plot related things. Leslie Stevens, who is the guy that wrote this and was really created this, he was involved with several other projects with William Shatner and other people you see on Star Trek. Limits. Was also involved in some other science fiction things later. So, Gene Roddenberry picked up a lot of the actors from Outer Limits. So, all these people were in the same area. They knew each other and were involved in this. So it's kind of interesting. And most of the later things he did were all science fiction. Pretty much. This is Leslie Stevens, the creator of this and the writer. They picked actors that were kind of interesting. Maurice Evans, who was the bad guy in the limousine kind of guy. He was Dr. Zayas in Planet of the Apes, and in many and other kinds of things. So he was a well-established, actor. He was also in Rosemary's Baby and other things like that. So yeah, he was a well-established actor, big name. And so were the protagonists there. Hugh O'Brien was kind of a sexy action kind of character. So were the other guys that were doing that. And Burgess Meredith was a nerdy guy that was good at playing the controller back there and everything. And they had the people at the controls consoles and everything. And they had the obligatory woman that forced her way in there, a little sexist thing, and that was kind of new stuff, kind of a hot topic for 1972. And then we're trying to get a little bit of recognition, and so that was kind of weird. I'll talk about the actors and actresses more later. I thought one interesting thing about the plot was at one point, Burgess Meredith asked the guy that was doing the radio sweep to sweep across all amateur radio bands and walkie-talkie frequencies, starting at 12 megahertz and going up. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This was not a very deep plot or subject or anything. I didn't dislike this. It wasn't very deep. That's all I got, N5BB.
All right, thank you, Bill, and we'll come back and talk about that. So we will be talking about the plot. I couldn't find anything really descriptive of this thing, and I didn't take very good notes, but here's just something really quick on it. It says the Merrill disappearance series premiere, Lockwood investigates the disappearance of a State Department official, which leads him to a private country club where the key to the operation may be a card game. There you have it. Okay. Next up is Tony, NT5TM. NT5TM, Tony and Aaron. I know Aaron's out there too. Tony, what did you think about the plot for this? And if you got anything, side comments you want about Search, I think this is the first time you've ever seen it. So please go ahead from KE5ICX.
Are you here to tell me what a bad Googleizer I am? Oh wait, that's the wrong movie. That's Zoolander. What? Really have nothing in common. I just thought Zoolander liked to make fun of people who didn't understand technology. And this show was kind of forward-looking about technology. Yes, I had the misfortune to be alive during some of the 1970s, and finding out information was so tedious. Hiking from one building to another, paging through smelly card catalogs, flipping through the indexes of magazines, and trying to just endlessly take notes by hand with pencil. It took forever to find out anything. So, yeah, the idea that this elite private detective would have a team of expert search engine operators to tell him things really quickly, it's like he was a Googleizer. He was a good Googleizer. Or at least they were. And they had a fist fight and suits and like luxurious sets, I guess all this kind of stuff they liked in the 70s. And cars. Oh man, I hate cars from the 70s. There were beautiful cars in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 80s and 90s. Notice I skipped over the 70s when all cars looked like these just steel behemoth aircraft carriers that looked like a helicopter was going to land on their hood or something. The tires squealed a lot though. So I think the plot was rather tedious and was focused on showing what wonderful research assistants he had And I guess that must have been very impressive to people back then that yeah, if you had people working with you who didn't take 10 weeks to find things in a library card catalog, you could do so much more. But I'm just, I can't relate to it. It seemed so annoying. But outside of the computer seemed so unoriginal and boring. Oh, look, a fist fight. I just could not get into the plot of this. So it was certainly well made. They put in a lot of effort. I'll comment more about characters and effects later. And the plot might genuinely have been good. I'm not unbiased enough. I just couldn't stand it. But that could be me. NT5TF.
Oh, Tony, it's not just you. I had some of the same visceral reactions. I haven't seen this show since probably it aired. It's been many, many years, and I had a similar reaction. All right, Melissa, I'm going to skip over you. You may be gone, but I will ask you in a little bit what you think about all this if you're still there. So just keep listening. Next up is Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, what did you think about the plot for the television series Search, the Morrow Disappearance? Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
All right, this is KG5BZW. Seems to be something alright through Echo Link, so I'll just use radio. What can I say that hasn't been said? Yeah, certainly there were many innovative ideas. I'm wondering, the image search just got kind of blew me away. But I was really kind of curious what, how exactly they were proposing that was done, because obviously we've got, in fact, they've more or less disabled it, as far as I know, the face searches in Facebook and all of that, and all, obviously, even some of the ideas to implement such a search like that wouldn't necessarily be available in the 70s, but I don't know. That parts of the show were so thin and concept that you wanted to not pay attention at all. Just kind of try to turn parts of your brain off and just like accept what's happening and whatever. Those were the fights were just silly, and the car chase. I mean, what was the name of that movie? I don't know. There's been some. I believe there was a movie that's well known for its famous car chase, and I'm wondering if just everybody tried to emulate afterwards or something. I don't know. It was a French movie, but I can't really remember. I'm getting off point here. As far as the plot goes, actual plot, there was, I have to say I was surprised by the ending where it turned out the guy that was hired team was also the instigator of the crime that they were trying to solve. Probably not the most unique plot device, but it surprised me. Actually, let me read that. See if I'm still.
Okay, I'm switching to Echo Link now, apparently. The signal's been on and off, but anyway. Yeah, let's just sum it up as I liked some of the ideas introduced, but the plot was weaker than I would have hoped. So that's really all there is to it. KG5 BZW, back to net.
Thank you, Jay. Oh, and by the way, just a shout out to you. K1GDB, that's Guy, is looking to talk to you. So I don't know how you guys may contact each other, but he was asking. I got a side note here for you. So he's on the lookout for you, so you may want to give him a jingle. Next up is Virginia, KV5F. You saw tonight's Afterglow specialty, which is probe, the Morrow incident. What did you think about, the Morrow disappearance? What did you think about it, and what did you think about, I don't know, this TV series in general, if you recall it, from KE5ICX?
KE5ICX and the net. First, I'm going to correct my call. It starts with a November Victor 5 Foxtrot. I do that often. I switch K's and N's pretty regularly. Okay, well, let's see. I do not recall this airing. I'm a little bit young to remember that. It reminds me of things that aired later on that I do remember seeing. I think it's pretty typical of the time. I tend to go a little easier on these things because I try to judge them by the time in which they were made rather than what we've seen in the interim, which is a 50-year breach between when this was aired and what where we are now. So we've been exposed to so much more sophisticated technology and sophisticated storytelling, and at this point, TV was a much lesser medium than cinema, and TV was, it was pretty accepted that it was going to be very derivative. So I think this was very derivative of the spy thing, the James Bond thing, the Mission Impossible thing, the cop shows, Cars. I agree with Tony, the cars in the 70s were terrible. I don't think the cars in the 80s were much better, but they were, at least some of them were, they were trying. So anyway, that's just an aside about cars. I did see the definite influence of this kind of space program. You had that mission control kind of room. You had the very typical female interest who's the quippy independent female. She's got a lot of romantic tension with I think his name is Lockwood, the hero guy. And I, coming from being about a decade later in the things I was paying attention to, this definitely makes me think of one of my favorites, which was Knight Rider. That was just kind of a more mobile version of what they were trying to do here, which was go, hey, we've got technology that it was making us aware of the fact that there was developing technology to do surveillance and to do image recognition and do really quick data searches on big, they must have had some really expensive, fancy phone lines to, they were essentially on the internet, and that's kind of how Knight Rider was. They were like, kind of had their own, they were on their own version of the government spy internet. And so I think these kind of shows are interesting because it shows what people knew was coming, and now we are living it. And now it's so, broad spectrum that there's software that does all the image matching for people and uses it for marketing and uses it for all kinds of things we never thought it would be used for. It's all coded. It's all algorithms. It's all automatic. The plot of this was, I thought, a pretty common plot. There's always like a posh club, and there's a guy at the door, paneling. There's dudes, gambling for big money. Traveler's checks. I love that. That was great. And I'll save some comments for later when we're really talking about characterization. But I thought the plot was, it was a simple plot. It was a 1-hour TV thing. It had to have a pretty straightforward plot. I hated the twist at the end. I thought it was super Deus Ex Machina. It was super convenient. Oh, I just happened to recognize the silhouette of the guy who's, pulling the strings, when I saw him sitting across the room in the country club. I thought that was ridiculous. He was, I think he, for him to recognize that guy, oh, you're the guy who's pretending to be the guy running this investigation, and you're actually, the kingpin of the whole thing. I thought that was kind of lame and very, very super too convenient. And of course, everybody's too beautiful and too perfect, and their hair never gets messed up. And who doesn't love a bunch of wide ties and 3-piece suits and curly hair and big rings? To me, it's just fun to see all the stereotypes and the fast cars and police chases and all that. So, and there's always, that was so common in the show back then, there was always some guy that was missing or dead, and they had to figure out what had happened to him. And it kind of was disappointing to me that it was all about gambling debts. But anyway, I thought that to me, the dumbest thing technologically, it was very a Knight Rider moment. At least in this one, they tried to at least account for where all the cameras were, because in Knight Rider, it's like, hey Kit, show me whatever, and it seems like Kit has cameras everywhere. But they at least tried to make it logical where the cameras were in this. But the dumbest thing in the whole thing to me, besides the ending twist, was the thing where they were trying to show infrared so that he could get out of the dark room. And I was like, okay, that room's not that dark. He doesn't really need infrared guidance to get the guy out of the room while everybody's fighting. It was pretty funny. I was laughing out loud during that part. Anyway, I thought it was just, a good old cheesy TV show from the 70s. And yes, I was looking at the running time of it and going, yeah, this is back when. And I remember that from watching, I watched the old Star Trek episodes, and it was back when you got 50 minutes to tell a story back then, and now it's like Tom said, it's 42. And the 30-minute format is down to 20. You get 20 or 21 minutes now. You got to either, have a really super simple plot or have some really, really efficient storytelling these days. Things back then in the 70s, the plot moved more slowly and more leisurely. And the plots were also a little simpler back then, too. So, anyway, that's all I have to say on the plot without just repeating myself. So, back to you, Tom, K5ICX in V5F.
Good, thank you, Virginia. And yeah, I corrected your call here. When you came on, you were doubled over, and I thought, I know her call, but I messed up on the first letter. Go figure, right? Okay. And by the way, there's while you're speaking, I was kind of Googling through this. There's a podcast. It is still active, by the way. It's called the Network, Battle of the Network Shows. And the fellow who created this podcast, which has been going on for a number of years, apparently, actually did this because of this show. Search. It was one of his favorite shows, so I guess he's an older codger like me. It's been around, but it's their Battle of the Network shows on Good Pods, and he does go into detail about this particular episode and this particular television show. I haven't listened to any of them. Don't know if it's any good, but I thought that was rather curious. Okay, next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, tell us about your thoughts on Search from 1972. Go ahead.
This is WB50ZL. Well, for some reason, I never saw these shows back in the early 70s, and I can't imagine why. We had a wonderful Motorola console color TV and we watched everything that moved. All the 70 shows were, to me, just fabulous. The clothes, the hair, the cars, the fights, the chases. The fact that, they were inane and predictable didn't matter. They were just fun. And, this is really typical of that era and that genre. So I enjoyed this little romp. Mindless, yes, and, don't take it too seriously, but just lots of fun. I loved all the flashy lights in the control room and the supposed technology, and that, again, all these shows had the most implausible inventions and technology that you could ever imagine, but that's okay. We knew it at the time. We knew it was ridiculous, but we didn't care. It's like MacGyver putting stuff together. We knew it was dumb. We didn't care. We just loved it. It was fun. And that, there's kind of an innocence of that era that, just kind of, it was just, we didn't take ourselves too seriously. And they made so many shows like this, so many spy shows and action-adventure shows. So I may watch some more of these. This was fun, and I still have no explanation of why I didn't see it in 1972. Okay, back to net, WB50ZL.
Thank you, Brenda, but I think probably the reason why is it was on NBC, because nobody watches NBC even today, so unless you watch sports. So there you have it, or the Olympics. Okay, next up is Cruz, KI5KWG. Now, Cruz is right down your alley. Tell us, did you see this show? And you did see tonight's episode, so what do you think about it, plot-wise? KE5ICX.
Following that, KI5KWG. Yeah, I should start with saying I think I needed a Snickers bar when I watched this last week. Didn't care for this at all. My notes say the writers are being held under duress, desperately trying to get a message out for help. That was what I wrote about 15 minutes in. And my other comment on the plot area was programming like this is why my generation played outside. So that's what I had on this. KI5KWG, back to net.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that. Jeez, you just shot it in the head. Okay. No problem. All right. I'll come back to you, Mike, in a minute. I'm going to go down to Bill and get some final comments and maybe some other check-ins. But W5BLT, Bill, what have you over the plot for this television show, The Search from 1972? Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
W5BLT, I am not sure I can salvage this. No, I really liked it. It was very simplistic, but for me, as someone who's totally blind, there was a lot of dialogue and description in it, going back and forth with the Burgess Meredith's character, and I've always liked Burgess Meredith's character. My first exposure to him that I remember was the Rocky movies, and the only reason I liked Rocky was at the beginning was his character. I don't know, I just he played, and so every time he was in a movie, then I can remember watching it. As far as the plot goes, it was very simplistic. I felt like I was coming in on the middle of something and wasn't quite sure what I was watching. There, parts unexplained and things like that. And so then when I found out, started Googling, and I did what you did, Tom. I started looking for the movie, and I spent a couple hours today doing that, and I couldn't find it. I did watch your guys' channel, and there's a DVD set for those of you who be outside. You might want to invest in the DVD set. But no, in all seriousness, the show in Star Trek itself aired at 10 o'clock on Wednesday nights, and so on both these shows, most people that probably would be the target audience were not up on that late. So as a kid, I remember being into science fiction, and anything science fiction I wanted to watch, and my parents, I at 9. So anyway, but the plot was very simplistic. It had the kind of the usual stuff for the 70s, and but I thought it was very interesting, all the technology that they talked about and that we kind of have commonplace today. So in that sense, I was really fascinated by the show. I too thought of Knight Rider. And kind of a James Bond thing, and some of the other shows that I've watched. So for me, it was just kind of a fun show. I didn't take it too seriously, and just kind of enjoyed it. I was recovering from wisdom surgery, tooth surgery. So what do I know? W5PLT. Back to you, Tom.
All right, thank you, Bill. I think we're kind of reaching a consensus here. Yeah, well, I do remember this series, and I think I tried to, in some way, shape, or form, actually, I'm trying to jog my memory. I used to record the television shows on my cassette recorder I had as a kid, and I still have all those tapes. They're sitting in the garage right now. I don't know if any of them are playable. I think the movie version of this thing is on one of those tapes, which is part of the reason why I remember it. But I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. It's somewhere buried in the garage with a whole bunch of other stuff. But the series itself, for me, I thought was very interesting. This plot was embarrassingly simple and stupid. I agree with everybody else in this regard. It first off, when they do a positive ID on whomever they're talking to through their video something or other. I don't know how many people had video something or others in their home or in their business. I don't think anybody did, but except super secret organizations, which this is not. It is a public or a private organization working for the public good, I guess, or something. I don't know, but it seemed odd. And then you get a positive ID with the guy with the silhouette in the background. And we know for a fact, way beforehand, that this guy is going to be trouble. I mean, who hides their face, right? A high-ranking official in the State Department. Okay. And, of course, he ends up being our buddy, Dr. Zayas. No, Dr. Prince. What was Dr. Zayas? Yeah, it was Dr. Zayas, I think. You go, I don't know. What are you supposed to do? I mean, it's pretty easy. One of the things, though, I have to say, and this is true of any television show, is that you've got to finish it in an hour or less, in this case 50 minutes, so you had some exposition at the very beginning to try and fill you in on what the show is, because it doesn't have that, doesn't have a completely familiar format, although it steals from all formats. Let me hear you say it. Since you're trying to tell a story in 4 acts or in 5 acts, today it's 5 acts, which really kind of messes things up, but in the old days it was 4 acts, 4 commercial breaks, is that along the way you have to tell your story, and then you got to complete your story. And anything that was a whodunit or required you to do something quickly so you could end the story by the top of the hour there was always a shortcut. Always watch them. You'll always see them. They still do it on NCIS and FBI's and the other FBI's and CSI and MOUSE and all those shows, SWAT and all that. There's always some key element that has to shortcut to the end. So I remember an episode of CSI or something, and it says, well, the guy had spaghetti in his bowels or something. I don't know how they came up with that. He died and he'd eaten chili spaghetti, and that instantly meant that he was from Cleveland. Check all the flights coming in from Cleveland, and they find this one guy, and that somehow it connects the story. Well, the same thing applies here. You got I recognize the guy, and Virginia mentioned this as shortcuts to the end. That happens a lot. It happens today. Watch any episode, and you will find of anything that has a whodunit type of story, and you will find there's a shortcut to get you to the end. That one thing that doesn't require you to go through tons and tons of clues. You just need one clue that absolutely tells you that it's got to be this guy or gal, and that's what happened in this particular episode. All right, let me pause for a minute and ask our non-watchers here if they've got any comments so far, whether it reminds them of anything or if they suddenly remembered things involving this. So let me go up. Melissa's probably gone, but she might be there. I'll start with her, and then I'll go down to Mike. So KF5GRH, Melissa, what do you think? Is this something that you would want to watch from KE5ICX?
Well, good evening, Tom and everybody. I hung on and hung on. And just like the search the other day when the firefighters went over the rubble and missed me and couldn't find me for a while, I was disappointed. No, I'm just kidding. I watched that movie, but yeah, I love listening to y'all. Y'all put me to sleep so well. I mean, I love listening to it. It's interesting, and I was actually looking at my daughter and son-in-law bought a new car, and I'm looking at it. It's a beautiful Subaru, which has nothing to do with your movie. But anyway, I'm going to go in. I've had a very long day, two major disasters in 2 days. One was a simulated building crumbling in Disaster City, and today an airplane was shot down out of the sky, simulated by a drone attack. I mean, 2 disasters. I gotta go to bed. Y'all have a very good night, and it's always fun listening to this net to put me to sleep. Y'all have a good night, KF5GRH.
Oh, Melissa, thank you for sticking around for that, and I'm glad we put you to sleep. That means that you're going to get a good night's sleep. So, right. Mike, KI5YOV, Mike over McKinney. What do you think? If you're still there, you may have gone to bed, or maybe you're asleep, maybe sitting in a chair or something, but what do you think? Is this something you would watch, or does it remind you of anything you've seen in the past, good or bad, from KE5ICX? All right, well, it is late. It doesn't surprise me we're putting them to sleep. Okay, I'm going to call for any new check-ins. Tonight's movie discussion topic is from the television show called Search from 1972. We watched The Merrill Disappearance. If you're out there and you'd like to join us, you don't have to have seen the episode, but we'll take check-ins. Please come with your call sign, your name, and did you see tonight's episode?
Eagle Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean Fort Worth. Yes, I do have code 10 clearance, and I did see this film.
All right, well, always late to the show, but perfect attendance. KB9SOK. Sean, what did you think of tonight's episode of Search from KE5ICX?
Yeah, this is KB9S, okay. I think it's been pretty well said. This thing was a very simple plot. As you talked about these type of movies, there's some little thing that just instantly gives you the answer, and it's just not particularly satisfying. It's rare to see an in-depth plot. Kind of understandable, I guess. Like you said, it's only 50 minutes. So yeah, this really was just a James Bond style character, or attempted to be, with just a whole lot more gadgets. and yeah, some of those things have not come true. But I was a little disappointed that they just simply used the ring for everything. It's like that thing can do everything, including make you dinner and probably, fix your car and, probably shoot lasers and probably travel through time. They just simply, we don't even have anything that small that can do all that stuff now. Yes, we have many cameras, but it can't do all that thing did. So yeah, I felt they way overused used it. Even for a show that's 50 years old. And yeah, I was very young when this came out, so I don't remember it. If it was playing, it's not really ringing a bell. It just didn't ring a bell at all for me. I don't remember ever seeing it in syndication either. So it kind of surprised me that, science fiction kind of stuff I like. But, so yeah, I really don't remember this. And it makes sense that you said there was a movie or a pilot before this, because I was confused at the beginning of really what this group was supposed to be. It seemed like, yeah, they investigated things, but they were for hire, so they really seemed to be doing general good for the public, or, it just seems like they were out to make a buck. It's like they had no real authority, so it's like, how could they possibly get by the stuff they got by without going to jail? Obviously they were interfering with real investigations, and, it just seemed strange. It would have been more interesting had they, and maybe they do in later episodes, if they helped out the people that really couldn't help themselves, but it just seems like they were just doing it for the money. So yeah, it was just kind of a boring plot, to be honest, very simple. A lot of gadgets, which I'm sure would have probably been cool back in the 70s. On his panel there, I noticed he pretty much used one switch to do everything. so yeah, I won't just keep going where most said. So just, kind of a thumbs down for me on this one. Back to net, KB9S, okay.
Thank you, Sean. And, you bring up a good point. I forgot to mention this. I take terrible notes, but, it is a private organization, and how the heck do they manage to go in? There's privacy concerns and things like that, and yet they're able to, first off, get all the information available everywhere with their computer systems. If they're not the federal government, they're not the government, then how do they get that? Who do they, it's the State Department. How the heck do they have all this information from the State Department? Come on. It's Google, but in a way, how do they do that? And the guy with the security clearances, they knew he did security clearances. If you're with the State Department, you're doing security clearances, I don't think that should be general knowledge, because that's a way of getting in. So, I don't know. Very odd. And you're very right about that. And is it a vigilante organization of sorts, because they're private and people pay for it? What if the people aren't that, they aren't good guys, they're bad guys, and they want the information? Well, money's money. So I don't know. There may have been some episodes that actually touched upon that. It was fertile ground for that sort of thing. And I don't remember all the episodes. In fact, I can only remember I just watched, so we've got to wonder. Okay. Anyone else want to check in at this point? We're talking about the television show called Search from 1972, and we're talking about the Merrill disappearance, the premiere episode. Anybody else want to join us? Please come now. All right, so much silence. But I think we got all the normal check-ins here. So let's go to the top of the list. We'll talk about the characterization and acting in this one. I'm sure Bill has some comments on this one. I think we all do. I don't think any of them will be good, but you never So, Bill, what did you think about the acting and the characters on this second round from KE5ICX?
This is N5BB. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, there's made-for-TV little thing. This is no great acting or anything. However, one of the actresses I'm going to focus on, simply because I was kind of intrigued by her. So the love interest over there for the character, the social secretary at the club or whatever, that was not really a bad person. She was just doing her job, I guess. She was a very striking-looking woman, and I was looking to see who was that. And I was looking at a list of actresses. One name, Capucine, Capucine. I said, who in the world is that? I don't recognize that name, but I thought I'd seen her somewhere. She looked familiar, you know. I knew I'd seen something else with her, and I was correct. Her name as a model was Capucine, and she used it as an actor also. She was from France, and she became, at age 17, about 1945, she became a model, and a few years later, she was acting in movies. And later, she was in movies with William Holden and other people. She was in The Pink Panther as the Inspector Clouseau's wife, who was having an affair with the jewel thief, and she leaves Inspector Clouseau at the end of the Pink Panther movie. And in a number of other films, nothing very fancy, but and she was kind of mad. She wasn't happy because, you know, everybody knew she was a model and had this model's face and everything. And so they never put her wearing grungy clothes, acting as some regular person. She was always acting as a princess or some other, fancy person. And unfortunately, she committed suicide at age 62 in 1990 by jumping out her 8-story window in Switzerland. So she was very unhappy and ill and depressed at the end of her life. But she was this very impressive-looking actress back then in 1972, and she added something to the movie. I mean, without her in that movie, it was all these men that were just doing their gambling thing and everything. But she added a little splash of class to that establishment. N5BB Friday. And Hugh O'Brien did his standard things, looking good. There were times when he was actually kind of brushing his hair back with his hand. He had this fancy hairdo kind of thing, and all he was supposed to do was to look good and act like he could be a James Bond kind of character and woo the ladies and everything and sigh. You have to need very deep writing for that character. But he could pull it off. That was his character. Just like Capucine can play this kind of, princess model kind of person. He could pull off that other kind of character and drive the sporty car really fast and chase the criminals, So, they at least got characters in those roles that could play him. The other character, there's no backstory on anybody. I really didn't know anything about anybody's backstory. Nothing at all. Home life, where they come from, nothing. Zero, except one guy had gone to a certain university. They figured that out with the ring, but that was all. No backstory. So this is just an action film. That's all it was. Let's see, what else about the acting? A lady that was a medical telemetry that was able to get a security rating of 10, so they could do the very stupid thing of everybody else fouling out of the room before they talked about something secret, which I was really laughing when they were doing that. That was very odd. Her name in the movie, she played Gloria Harding. The actress was Angel Tompkins. And she played a couple of other things over the years. You know, she wasn't a great actress, but she played a few of the things in TVs and movies. And, of course, Burgess Meredith, who was the VCR camera, or wherever he was, the guy that was the controller guy, he was in all kinds of things. You know, if you saw any movies from the 60s, 70s, 80s, you saw Burgess Meredith every once in a while. He was in lots of different things. And he played the same kind of character he did in the other things, the same attitude, the same... It was not a stretch for him, but he was typecast. Mentioned earlier, Maurice Evans, who was in Planet of the Apes, he was a pretty good actor, I think, and he played that, but he didn't have to do very much. It acted as a mysterious character. Mysterious Roger White. All the other people were just throwaways. All the other people in the control room, who cared? All the other people there that were at the table that were doing the gambling, who really cared? Didn't make any difference. Security agents from the security agency, the government security agent, who really cared? They were really stupid. They trusted everything that Hughes, the agent, said, and pretty dumb. I don't know. It wasn't a very, it was, as Brenda said, it was a TV movie thing, a TV show from 1972. You shouldn't expect much from it. The other things that were being written were just as bad. And you had the cars in them. That was a major character, was the cars. You had to drive the cars fast. You had to slide them around the corners. Sports cars were small. The other cars were big and square. And you floored them and spun them around the corners. That's what happened in the movie. And there's always a winding road you had to drive down at night. That's all I got. In Fabibi.
Hey, thank you, Bill. Next, Tony, NT5TM. Your thoughts about characterization and the acting, of course.
Not much that's complimentary. I did notice, yes, there was some woman who used only one name in the credits. And I thought, oh, Sick Transit, Gloria Mundi. There's Prince, and there's Madonna, and there's all these other people. And, oh, there's this person. Everyone tries to be, famous by using only one name. They can all go jump in a filing cabinet somewhere. We'll put them in the pile of forgotten celebrities. The characters were extremely one-dimensional. I was particularly irked by the undercutting of the blonde woman in headquarters who came right out and said, I took your boss out to dinner last night, and so I have a level 10 security clearance. Oh, you're just coming out and saying she's sleeping her way to the top. That's, irksome. Worse than that was the comparison between this movie and Soylent Green. Because just as this movie depended on the secret detective having these Googleizers keeping him going with lots of research, in Soylent Green, each detective had a book, a researcher who knew the old cases and could go look things up in the library and actually knew how to read a map and things, an advisor, a mentor. And these people were all played by real actors and were interesting characters because Soylent Green was a better movie. And yeah, I just kind of wanted the scoops with Soylent Green to come and visit this movie and scoop the characters up and dump them in bins. So yeah, I am being pretty hard on it. I have not been very good at watching TV for most of my life. Unfortunately, I was at the same disaster Melissa was today. Well, she was out on the runway, with a wound, calling for help. I was in the Family Resource Center, Family Reception Center, going, "Where's my grandmother? She has got Alzheimer's. You've lost her. She probably didn't survive. Where is she?" I wasn't as good a character as some of the other actors, but I tried. So I'm going to go to bed. I wish everybody a good night and fewer movies like this one. NT5TM.
Okay, thank you, Tony. You have permission to go to bed, and they're dropping like flies. Next up, Jay, KG5BZW. Jay, your thoughts on characterization?
This is KG5BZW. On your last transmission to me, I thought you said somebody was looking for me. I'd like the call sign. I don't really have anything character-wise that I can't really bring anything new to the table. I would like that call sign, or maybe I just misheard and you were talking to somebody else. I don't know. Brain kind of shutting down, so may have made a few errors. Back to that, if you would please come back with the clarification here. This is KG5BZW.
Jay, you were the next person, and I did call you out, so no problem. And you kind of gave your explanation at this point. So we'll move along. No, you were right in line. NV5F Virginia, your thoughts on characterization and the acting from KU5ICX.
5ICX, NV5F. Well, I just yawned, but I would say for the most part I'm wide awake. So I think I can talk about this. I find it always kind of fun to go after Bill in 5BB because I often feel I need to play a devil's advocate. We seem to have almost opposing views at times, and that's what makes this fun. The characters were one-dimensional, but I have to remember, and I like to remind that this is the opening episode of a season of a TV show where we're expected to follow along for 23 to 25 episodes and learn about these people as we go. So they're not going to have a lot of background or character development in the first episode, but I think there were pretty standard stereotypes. You have the I'm gonna use Knight Rider because it's the show I remember, and that's what this reminds me of. You have the Burgess Meredith guy. He's kind of like Devin on Knight Rider. He's the venerable guy who runs the show and always has to be getting on the case of the Lockwood, Michael Knight type character. Like, oh, why are you doing that? Don't run off the rails. We got to go by the book on this. Or, what's this guy what's he gonna try to pull now? And then you have that character. He's a very standard, oh, I look great all the time. My hair's always in place. I've always got my act together. I have, a ring that has a camera in it, or a cufflink or whatever. The character always has something like that. I guess Michael Knight had a watch. He could unlock a door with it or show video of anything with it or talk to Kit on it or talk to Devin, or it had a little screen on it, so it's kind of the same character. And then the gal who was his biometric person, she had the tension with him, kind of like the Bonnie character in Knight Rider. and she's like, oh yeah, you're not all that, I'm not that into you, but it's obvious by everything she says that she's totally jealous of the beautiful woman that Lockwood has to wine and dine and romance and kiss and date for one episode of a show. I always wondered how a man like Michael Knight or this guy could handle that psychologically. Like you have a 50-minute romance with a different woman every week. It seems like it would be a real emotional roller coaster. And yeah, she brought a little class, but I'm sure there was, if I watch more of these, I'll bet you money there's that same character in every episode. There's the woman that he's got to kind of, have a little bit of a romance with. And then there's the other characters in the mission control room, and the acting was fine. It was fine for what it is. It was a TV drama. It was action adventure. I'm sure there was a standard cast of recurring bit part players that I, some of these people I recognize, others I'm sure were just pretty common in lots of shows, just like when you see an actor who's always playing different roles in, the early to mid 80s shows. And I think it was pretty much typical of the day, and the writing was, pretty standard 70s TV writing and acting, and you had that tier of people who would be, on TV, and then you'd have that character actor like Burgess Meredith, who was a great actor, who would be on a show like this, to give it that little bit of color and that venerable quality. I wanted to make note of something that the other Bill said earlier about being blind and being able to follow this because of all the dialogue. And I'd be interested on his turn if he would give me some kind of insight, because I have noticed in the last 20 years especially that the style of screenwriting has changed dramatically to where it's so, not cool to write exposition anymore. And I don't see well enough to drive, but I do see well enough to see what's going on in movies, and I get so frustrated because the plots in movies you go to the theater and see nowadays are so convoluted and not very, the exposition is so terrible. It's the style, and I sometimes don't have a clue what's going on in a movie that's a really, high production value, big box office movie. So I'm curious to hear what he would have to say about how things have changed and how much easier it is to follow the plots of these older things where exposition was an art form, and whether it was done well or done poorly, it was actually done so that we could follow what was going on in the show. So I would be interested to hear his take on that. Anyway, everything seemed fine. All those stereotypes were in place, and I, like Brenda called it, a romp. It was kind of a little romp, and I had fun laughing at it and seeing all the typical things that you see in a show like this. So that's all I have to say about that. K5ICX in the net, NV5F.
Thank you, Virginia. Oh, and I want to remind everybody, since we've gone over the 12 o'clock line, you may want to drop carrier occasionally because now we're on the timer. So just no biggie. We just transitioned over here about 30 seconds ago. I just want to remind everyone. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, your thoughts on characterizations and acting.
This is WB50ZL. Well, there was some awfully pretty people in this, which is typical for the day and for this genre. Of course, Hugh O'Brien is, extremely handsome, and I had enjoyed him when I was younger in the TV show about Wyatt Earp. I was a regular viewer of that show, and so he doesn't disappoint. And I think Virginia's right. There's probably that female type character in every episode. It's like Kirk or James Bond. Our hero has a different woman every time because he can never commit. But of course, they're crazy about this guy. Burgess Meredith, of course, is wonderful in anything he does. But he has dimension. Most of the characters were very deep, and they were just window dressing in many cases, or there just wasn't a whole lot of character development in this at all. All right, it's getting late. It's after midnight. I'm going to cut this short. WB50ZL back to net.
W5FC. Understood, Brenda. And by the way, just for everybody, I will call an open round after this if anybody has any final comments. But I'm going to finish off this round. KI5KWG. Bruce, your comments on characterization.
KI5KWG. I like Burgess Meredith. Pretty much unanimous on that, I think. However, when they zoomed in on the ring, it would have just been perfect to have him saying, enhance, enhance, enhance. That's all I've got. KI5KWG, back to net.
Okay. Next up, Bill, W5BLT. Bill, your comments on characterization. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tom. I look forward to these probably more than the show itself. Now, the characters, for the most part, were probably one-dimensional, very predictable, and yet I don't think they took it too seriously on some of these shows, and maybe I should save this for the third round, but I know in interest of cutting it short. I remember growing up in the 70s, I was born in 1969, and our big event was driving to Indianapolis to go to the mall. And we didn't have air conditioning, so you drove to Indianapolis to go to the mall to cool off. There wasn't a lot to do. And you also worked hard, and so if you were out, I grew up in farm country, so if you were out farming or your garden and canning and everything like that, you sat down and just kind of watched something like this. And it's probably no different than scrolling through endless apps looking for something entertaining. So, different time. It is very hard for me on the new shows. And I think that's why I like these older shows better. A lot of these writers and characters and actors and actresses grew up. Maybe they were born in the 1920s and maybe 30s, but they had some of them a radio background, or at least listened to radio. Some of them you can kind of tell that. But I think that there was more dialogue. There's probably more time for dialogue, and you didn't have as many special effects. Now movies seem to be about the next special effect and how gruesome can you make a killing and or murder. And so I don't know. I find myself loving the older stuff just because I can follow it better. Unless they have a descriptive video service which has the narration track. I just liked it just also because I was a history major in school and a microcomputer minor, and so for me, I look at these characters and these shows as history, and so while the characters were very predictable, I just found this a lot of fun. That's all I've got. I will listen through, but I don't have anything for the third round. Love getting together with you guys. W5DLT.
All right, thank you, Bill, and thanks for your comments this evening. KB9SOK, Sean, your thoughts on characterization?
This is KB9S. Okay, I'll keep it kind of short. Yeah, I agree with everybody. Yeah, very one-dimensional. But then again, yeah, what do you expect for a single episode of a TV series? And I really don't remember very many series from the 70s where they got deep into the characters even after a season. It just wasn't, the shows were just simple, fun. They all followed that kind of basic standard format. So, yeah, I think the acting was adequate for what they were given. So I really can't give the actors a hard time because there just wasn't a whole lot there. It's just a simple show, which I guess was okay. And I will say, I guess I did get a couple of giggles watching some of it. And just since it basically won't be like the third round, I'll just say I do think probably for its time, they did put some money in their set, so the special effects, I guess, were okay for 1972. And that kind of show. So, yeah, enjoyed talking to everybody. Back to that, KB9S okay.
All right, thank you, Sean. And thanks for your comments as well. Just a brief one, then I'll open it up to any final comments. And I like the Burgess Meredith character. Of course, he was cast for it to type, which is what he always does. But I thought the idea of the fact that he has to do everything. He has to lead his team. He has to deal with the politics that goes along with it. He's got to figure out how to deal with personalities. And he's got a little bit of a sarcastic, acerbic personality that goes along with it. Here we go again. We're going to do this again. And now we got to have Probe 1 do what he does best. So I thought that was kind of fun because after a while, and you've been in a job for a while, that's kind of how things kind of pan out. So I kind of like that. Of course, the problem with that, too, is exactly what everybody's talking about, the superficiality of everything. It gets to be kind of, you go, I don't know, you wonder. Now, there was a comment about exposition and episodes in that. Well, one of the things, of course, is that the episodes have gotten shorter and shorter, so you don't have time for exposition, at least on broadcast television. Now, if you go behind paywalls, and there's a number of them, there's Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, and a number of others. When you see newly done programs, you'll see that they do run a full hour, sometimes over an hour. You get a lot of exposition, and you get a lot of story development. And the thing is that people are paying for it, so you're not selling soap. And so, in the end, you end up with it being financed in many ways. The program's already paid for itself by the time it airs. There's somebody who had written a book, The Days That TV Got Great, I think was the name of the book, and it has everything to do with what's happened over the last couple of years with television and the fact that it actually has gotten better. It just hasn't gotten better over air. And so you end up with much more sophisticated programs going in the other direction. Movies, on the other hand, are getting dumbed down quite a bit because that actually is your mass market now. You don't have it paid for up front. So you're doing your standard stuff that makes it work. So in order to make that money back, because movies have gotten very, very expensive to produce. So I think that has everything to do with it. They've taken or switched places. All right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Anybody who would like to make any final comments, I will take your call signs now. Please come now.
W5BLT, Bill, I lied.
November 5, India Mike Sierra, JJ in Carrollton. I did not see the film, but I do have a comment.
All right, I got W5BLT Bill, and I got N5IMS JJ's checking in with a comment. There was a double. I'm sure there's others out there. Please come again.
Hey, WWR Roman Grapevine. Just checking out for the count. Thanks for running that down.
NB5F.
I picked up two more. I got N8WWR Romy. Fine. By the way, thank you. You did a good net. I was listening in on the side. So have a good evening. And NV5F Virginia. So we'll start at the top. W5BLT. Bill, go ahead. W5FC.
Just three quick things. One, there is a YouTube channel I found, Old Joe's Reminiscent. And he goes through and reviews the series and the movie. So that's kind of filled me in when I listened to the review on the movie before the episode. A lot of times the networks will do a movie as kind of a prelude, kind of like I think Knight Rider and others. Then the other thing, Brian, maybe I'm mispronouncing the name, actor, he didn't want to be typecast and didn't want to commit to this series. So they had two other actors that were probes in this, so he was probe one. So if you watch the series, you'll see some other characters as the probes. And then the other thing, exposition ad nauseum kind of reminded me of the series Rings of Power. There was a lot of character development there. I know we're not talking about that, but pick up the paid service, so it moved at a slower pace and they can afford it. Those characters. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you, W5BLT.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks for your comments this evening. I enjoyed it very much. N5IMS, JJ, you have comments. Go ahead.
Now, one thing that's kind of not movie related, I think Jay was asking you about the person, the ham that was trying to get in contact with him, which I believe was Guy, but I'm not sure. You mentioned that there near the beginning of the net. So if you can check your notes and stuff, I think that's what Jay was asking you about earlier. Now, as far as the film, talking about plot exposition, the best line I remember from plot exposition was from the Great Muppet Caper. You had Diana Rigg playing Lady Holiday, talking to Miss Piggy, and just giving her all kinds of information about, things that happened that they really couldn't show in the movie. And then Miss Piggy just looked at her and says, "Why are you telling me all of this?" And then Lady Holiday said, "Oh, it's plot exposition. It had to go somewhere." This is N5INS.
Oh, thank you, JJ. That's very, very true, and that's happened a lot. It even happened in Star Wars, too. You remember there's a scene that they cut that had Jabba the Hutt was supposed to be in it at the space dock, and and they restored it in the movie, but it made no sense because what they did was they jettisoned it and then just added it into dialogue as something that happened. So that happens a lot. You make a good point. NV5F, Virginia, your comments.
Okay, well, I have a further comment on exposition, but first I'll talk about something I noticed in this that I loved was the sound effects. You had the mission control kind of room with all the blinky lights and all that, and then you had some fantastic stock sound effects, some of which I think have been used on Star Trek, some of them that I know I've heard on cartoons, blinking, beeping, flashing, computery sounds. I just think that's great. I loved how back then you had kind of this library of sound effects that people would go to. Exposition, I think, I have to agree with you about the TV. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, broadcast TV anymore. I haven't watched broadcast TV, appointment television in a very long time. I do, one of my pet peeves is how they do it in movies. Now, they've got to make these movies that somehow need to be 2.5 hours long, but they don't. Some of the exposition is so terrible that you have to see a movie 3 or 4 times to figure out what's happening, and then it's part of some megaverse where you had to see about 20 other movies to know what led up to this, and from 20 different plot lines. I really liked the new Top Gun movie because it was just a good old regular movie with a regular plot, with a beginning, middle, and a nice, satisfying ending. And I hope that comes back. I'm kind of weary of how movies are now. And I do agree with what you were saying about the paywall on the internet. You can get some pretty decent programming. Some of it I like, and some of it I think is awful. I think that because of it's online, they can cross boundaries of propriety and family friendliness that make a lot of shows extremely unpalatable, and I think that happened with the new Star Trek shows. I've started watching the Strange New Worlds, and I found it to be pretty good, and I think it was a response to Star Trek fans saying, watch all this new Star Trek, it's giving me nightmares, and I think they realized they needed to make a Star Trek show that felt like Star Trek, and I was watching some of it today, and the programs are longer. Definitely have a lot of good character development, and I think they're focusing with this particular Star Trek program less on the action and more on the more common Star Trek plots. There's a good cerebral plot with a nice twist in it, and that gets you thinking. They've even had a couple of whimsical episodes, which I was kind of starting to miss. So yeah, I think I agree with you, Tom, on the fact that the programs online are some of them are even to the point of being almost exhaustively expository. It's like, okay, we don't need. I like the Rings of Power. I watched 2 or 3 episodes of that, and I was like, this is boring. It's too much of that. But anyway, I have my preferences. So anyway, I'll be quiet. It's late, and everybody, hope you have a good rest of your weekend. And I will be hoping to get over to Tom's house next Friday. I'll be spending the week coming up with a logistic plan for that. Maybe somebody can help me out there. Anyway, have a good night. K5ICX in the net, MD5F.
Good. Thank you, Virginia. Anyone else have any additional comments before I close her out? Okay, very good. We have a mini field trip this Friday. If you'd like to join us, we're going to have at Tom Schuessler's. He's down in Irving. We have s'mores outside. We're going to watch on big screen The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., the first episode, which is 2 hours long, actually 90 minutes when you take all the ads out. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's also available online for free. You can find it. I will send you the links for the for free version of this. I think it's Tubi. There are others that are for pay, but why do that when you can see it for free? It'll be there. You will get the information in your email. If you're not receiving emails, just send for the movie info ahead of time. Just send me an email at Kilo Echo 5 India Charlie X-ray KE5ICX@yahoo.com and say I'd like the info, and I'll send it to you. I'm not going to post that on. I will post the fact that we're having the event, but I'm not going to post addresses on Facebook. I just don't think that's going to work. But in any case, that's what we'll be watching next week. We'll see it on Friday, 7:30. The movie will start. 7 o'clock, we'll get together and have our little snackies and then do our thing.
W5FC.
Look for all that info in your inbox tomorrow morning. 7:3, everybody. Had a great time. This turned out to be quite an interesting discussion for a 1-hour television show, or in this case, 50 minutes. We say bye-bye, bye-bonds. We'll see you next week. Or on Friday. This is KE5ICX. I'm clear.